Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to another episode of Trudge Report. This is a recovery-based podcast, but don't worry. If you're not sober or you're not ready to be sober, we talk about plenty of other things, including sports, trending topics, conspiracy theories, and a good bit of nonsense. My name is Sean, and I am your host. I am joined by my good friends and fellow trudgers, Bill and Greg. You can check out new episodes of Trudge Report every Tuesday. Listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Later every week, you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, but please be sure to download and share on your listening platforms. We want to give a strong shout out, as always, to Miss Janine Stella and Stella Mix Podcast Management. We're jazzed to be here, and we're running with the big three tonight, boys. Good evening, Greg. How are you, sir?
I am more bricked up than the pyramids in Egypt and feeling good.
Didn't you use that one already?
Nope.
No, okay.
That
good.
one's new.
All right,
that
good.
one's new.
Bill, what's going on, man?
Feeling good, man.
Good.
Can't feel any better here. No Corey tonight. He's at the old Hosier. Well, I still don't know how to pronounce it. Take me to church
Hosier.
guy concert, whatever. But yeah, feels good to be here.
Yeah, it's just the big three tonight. No Corey at the moment. He may or may not call in. We're not sure. He's been sending distress signals all evening.
Drunk when he calls. We'll see.
That's very true. That's very true. Somebody might have spiked his drink. We're not really sure what's going on. He forgot, quote unquote, that he had a concert tonight and just realized it on our prep meeting last night. So it's just the three of us, but that's fine. We are good to go. No long, awkward pauses. And we're ready to rock and roll. Anybody got anything, public service announcements, anything they want to say real quick before we get right into it?
I'll say something real quick, Sean. Shout out to Silky Chickens. We just introduced 4 new members to the DeLuca household this week. If you know, you know. Janine's got a little picture. Maybe she can post up in the video for YouTube. But yeah, we've welcomed Pom Pom, Gingerbread, Lil Peep, and Michael Jordan to the DeLuca residence. So shout out to those lovable chickens with the great personalities. Back to you, Sean.
Very nice. I have seen them. We've all seen them. They are adorable. Best of luck to the chickens. Keep the dog away from them.
That's all right.
Is Gingerbread a ginger?
He thinks so, but he's not in color. He is in spirit, though.
All right, cultural appropriation. Okay,
Spirit
somebody's got
ginger.
to take a stand for it.
Spirit
He's
ginger.
Scottish. He's Scottish bloodline.
Whoa.
He's Ed Sheeran's brother.
He's a bloody Scot.
Fair enough.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we got some. We're gonna dig deep into some conspiracy theory tonight. I'll let Greg introduce it and go from there. And I've done minimal research on it, and I am the student, and I am ready to be taught. And I'm interested to see and hear about what's going on. So go right ahead, Greg.
Thanks, Sean. We got a little Trudge conspiracy corner tonight. And with this one, man, I've been doing a lot of research this week. I don't know how much actual conspiracy evidence is there. It's certainly not something where it's as clear as like a Jeffrey Epstein, where the guy one of the richest dudes around and who has all the dirt in the world on very powerful people, just so happens to kill himself in a jail cell when a camera doesn't work and the guards aren't around, or also how the people in Russia that keep standing up against Putin just keep killing themselves by shooting them themselves in the head and the heart, which is a weird way to go out. But hey, this one is a little not so cut and dry. But we're going to talk about Boeing, the airline manufacturer, tonight. And there's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to try and keep it clear and concise and short and sweet and to the point. I don't want to bore anybody. I don't want to go too crazy because we'll sit here and talk for hours about it. And I want to, leave a little bit of time for Bill and Sean to interject where they may. To start, I just wanted, for anybody that doesn't know what Boeing is, just a brief history on it. That, like I said, they are one of the world's leading aircraft manufacturers. They were founded in 1916 as Pacific Aero Products Company, shortly after William Boeing and Conrad Westervelt created the B&W seaplane. And then later, the next year, the company was renamed Boeing Airplane Company. Um, in 1929, fast forward, a decade later, after the acquisition of several aircraft makers, where they kind of were like buying up their competition a little bit, uh, it was renamed United Aircraft and Transportation Corporation, and then 2 years later, the group merged its four smaller airlines into United Airlines that we all kind of know today. Um, in 1934, the aircraft manufacturing part of it was required to be separate from the air transportation. So therefore, Boeing Airplane Company became one of the three major groups to arise from the dissolution of that. The two other entities were United Aircraft, later called United Technologies, and then of course United Airlines themselves.
which later became Raytheon, by the way.
Right. Right.
Oh, and now as RTX has
Mhm.
merged further into
Right.
one of the biggest companies in the world as well.
Mhm. In 1960, the company bought Vertol Aircraft Corporations, which at the time was the biggest independent manufacturer of helicopters. During the 60s and 70s, the company diversified into industries such as outer space travel, marine craft, agriculture, energy production, and transit systems. Um, Boeing has always had, up into the early 90s, their gold standard for the aircraft industry, was or not solely, but largely based on the fact that they were a very safe company. They always promoted safety first. Um, they they emphasize that, if they build the products and build them properly, then the profits will follow, not the other way around. Um, in 1966, Boeing, and this was happening a lot in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. You saw, overall, a lot of businesses were merging. Their buyouts, like AOL Time Warner was a big one back then, but it wasn't uncommon to see that. So in 1996, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas, which caused a little bit of uproar in the aviation industry. um, and it was reported that after the merger, there was, quote, a clash of corporate cultures where Boeing's engineers and McDonnell Douglas's bean counters went head to head, which the latter won, and that this may have contributed to a lot of the events that we're seeing today. But basically, McDonnell Douglas and the CEO, um, they had the philosophy of, like, the CEO was a guy that kind of came up on Wall Street. He was big in the 80s Wall Street cash is king kind of movement, and they emphasized profit. They wanted profit. They wanted to trim down costs. They wanted to cut corners to make as much money as possible. um the company's three main divisions are as follows: commercial airplanes, defense, space and security, and then global services, right? So, Boeing Commercial Airplanes builds commercial aircraft, including the 737, 767, 777, and 787, along with freighter and business jets. The division employs nearly 35,000 people, many of them whom work at the company's manufacturing facilities in Washington, outside of Seattle, and also in South Carolina. Boeing Defense Space and Security builds military airplane, missiles, space systems, commercial for both commercial and military customers, and this includes, satellites, spacecraft, rockets, etc. And then Boeing Global Services provides aftermarket support, such as maintenance upgrades to customers who purchase the equipment from the other two subsidiaries. So, um, the thing that the big thing that has been, what Boeing has come under such scrutiny for over the last, 8 to 10 years, beginning in 2018. There was or in 2018, late 2018 and early 2019, there were two separate Boeing 737 Max which are like narrow body passenger planes that crashed, right? And it left 346 people dead, no survivors from either crash. One was an Ethiopian airline. That was the one in 2019, and then the one in 2018 took off from Jakarta and crashed quickly after taking off. Both planes did. As a result of this, both of those crashes in 2020, a total of all of the 737 Maxes were grounded. It is interesting to note that China was the first country to ground all of the 737 Maxes that they had, and I want to say too, these two aircraft that crashed in 2018 2019 were both brand new Boeing 737s. They it wasn't like these were planes that had been, flying for years or whatever. They're brand new, had recently been sold to those different airlines. But yeah, so you see China grounded theirs, obviously Ethiopia, India, places, France, the UK. We were some of the last holdouts to ground our planes here, and we even went so far as to say that our transportation secretary flew on one of the planes, and that we were standing behind the Boeing CEO and their team, who was basically coming out at that point and saying it was pilot error that crashed both of these planes, right? And those planes that were grounded in this country are it's the first ever time that like there's been a presidential order. So Trump issued an executive order to ground all those aircrafts. It came out later on in June of 2020. The FAA found that several of the 737 MAX defects that Boeing deferred to fix in violation of the regulations that were imposed on them, right? So also the U.S. House of Representatives concluded its own investigation, citing numerous instances where Boeing dismissed employee concerns with the 737 MAX flight stabilizing feature, which is called MCAS. It was something where they on these 737 Maxes, they put this flight stabilizing feature in there, and then they didn't train the pilots how to use them, right? So Boeing is sitting there blaming these pilots for not knowing how the system works. And obviously, like, I'm not an aviator, and I'm certainly not an aviation expert, but after watching several videos and how this was explained is what this MCAS, when it would malfunction, was causing the plane to do is essentially upon takeoff, the pilot's stick would start, like shaking violently, right? And the MCAS system would try to kick on to stabilize the plane. Meanwhile, the plane's actual like computer system is malfunctioning because it's not working right with this MCAS thing. So basically, the plane is trying to tell itself to speed up and then slow down, nose up, nose down. And when they found the flight recorders from both of these crashes, that's the exact data that was on there. They looked like, just like they're spiking the whole time, right? So what the plane is doing is the plane is trying to nose down, and the pilot is trying to pull it back up, right, to save the plane from nosing into the ground. So like I said, the House of Representatives determined that is the feature that caused the two fatal accidents. And that they accused Boeing of prioritizing deadline and budget constraints over safety. They lack transparency in disclosing essential information to the FAA. It found that they assumed that simulator training would not be necessary for their pilots, and that had diminished safety and minimized the value of, obviously, like pilot training. and it inhibited technical design improvements. In 2021, the beginning of 2021, Boeing settled and agreed to pay over 2.5 billion after being charged with fraud over the company's hiding of information from the safety regulators. And then I think something that's more um, recent is in January of this year, 2024. I think a lot of us remember the big headline, but there was an Alaska Airlines flight where a door plug blew out, and it occurred on a 737 MAX 9 jetliner. It was just after the plane had reached somewhere over 16,000 feet, and it left a door-sized hole in the fuselage of the plane. The aircraft made an emergency landing in Portland, and several people on board were injured, but nobody died, thankfully. So the FAA again mandated immediate inspections of all these 737 Maxes fitted with those door plugs and grounded 171 aircraft. United Airlines found loose bolts on jets grounded by the FAA, raised questions about possible systemic problems with the Boeing 737 MAX. And then on January 12th, the FAA announced that it was expanding its scrutiny of Boeing. And they were gonna do a production audit of all the 737 Maxes. February of this year, the NTSB released a preliminary report indicating that the 4 bolts used to secure the panel had been removed, and had appeared not to have been replaced at Boeing's factory in Washington, right? So they removed these during an inspection, didn't put them back on, sent the plane up into the air with full of passengers and crew, and the thing blew right off.
Yes.
In March of this year, the Justice Department opened a criminal investigation into that exact the airline Alaska Airlines blowout situation, right? And then later on in the month, CEO Dave Calhoun and board chairman Larry Kellner both announced that they would be stepping down from their positions, right? So right now there is a criminal investigation going on, and the chips are going to start falling, right? And that's kind of like where the news picks up here with some of what's occurred currently, right? So there's been some whistleblowers that have come out. Some have been out for several years. Whether they've been involved in lawsuits and depositions, and there's a Netflix documentary that I'll mention later on that one of the guys was involved in and did interviews for. But the 2 of these whistleblowers have turned up dead both within 2 months of each other. So John Barnett, in March of 2024, he was a 62-year-old guy, worked at Boeing for over 30 years as quality control engineer and manager until his retirement in 2017. And for the past few years, he's been very outspoken about his skepticism of the company's safety standards, which have come under heightened scrutiny in recent months because of the malfunctions on the Alaska Airlines. So this dude was involved in testimony in a lawsuit against Boeing, and also was the guy that was involved in the Netflix documentary, did interviews and stuff like that. He was asked to speak to the House of Representatives. This guy, as testimony or as a testimony in a deposition, is getting ready to resume in March, and one day before he is supposed to testify in that, he is found dead in a hotel parking lot in his car from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Again, you And another thing too is it's all still under investigation, right? So the coroner has not come out yet and said whether they said it appears to be a suicide. They haven't ruled it a suicide. Now I understand that sometimes these things take time. However, most coroners who do this for a living can tell you real quick whether or not it was a suicide. They said that this guy did have high anxiety. His family members have come out and said that he had going through all this stuff with Boeing had really kind of ruined his life, and at first they tried to ruin his reputation. But I mean, he has friends on record saying that, listen, if I turn up dead, it's Boeing. It wasn't me. I'm not doing that to myself. So I don't know. Take what you will from that. So then shortly after, a little over a month later, Joshua Dean, a former quality auditor at a key Boeing supplier, Spirit, not Spirit Airlines, but Spirit Aeronautics, he had raised concerns about improperly drilled holes in the fuselage of 737 MAX jets, and he died on April 30th, approximately 6 days after he had quickly kind of he'd been diagnosed with like a MRSA infection, and which is deadly. I'll give him that. And they say that he developed pneumonia, but that he quickly fell into critical condition. They tried to save his life. They tried to life flight him to a larger hospital, and he died. Right, the guy was 45 years old, appeared to be in good health from uh, all accounts, right? But again, MRSA is deadly, for sure, and stranger things have happened. Healthy people die. Sean, go ahead.
Was the second guy in any type of depositions? Had he made it that far?
So
was it confirmed that he was a whistleblower?
Not that I have necessarily. Yes, he was a whistleblower, but I don't know if he was involved in the same deposition, in the same lawsuit or not.
I believe they were separate.
They were
two
separate
things.
Yeah.
But he was
a
in
confirmed
process of something.
whistleblower.
Okay.
Right. He was in process. I don't believe he got to deposition though,
Okay.
but he was
he was somewhere in the
like publicly known whistleblower.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And to be fair, there are two whistleblowers that their identities are not that are currently involved in lawsuits and depositions, that
Probably
are
smart.
not, their information has not been made public. So yeah, I don't know. The third guy who just came out, right, and he is still alive as of this afternoon. But this
For now.
gentleman, for now, right? Better watch yourself, Santiago. Santiago Paradis, and I'm hoping I'm saying that last name correctly. Has gone on record as Boeing's latest whistleblower. He worked on the end of the production line at Spirit Aerosystems, who the previous gentleman, he also worked for him for around a decade in Kansas, and he was in charge of doing final inspections on 737 fuselages before they were shipped off to Boeing. He claimed that he was finding anywhere from 500 to 200, from 50 to 200 defects on fuselages on a daily basis that were being sent out, right? He has said, quote, I was finding a lot of missing fasteners, a lot of bent parts, sometimes even missing parts. They just wanted the product shipped out. They weren't focused on the consequences of shipping bad fuselages. They were just focused on meeting the quotas, meeting the schedule, meeting the budget. If the numbers look good, the state of the fuselages didn't really matter. This guy claimed he felt under pressure from his managers to keep his reports of defects to a minimum, and was even given the nickname showstopper for slowing down production and delivery process when he wrote reports of defects that needed repairs.
My man.
Funny that that's mentioned because also in the Netflix documentary, the first gentleman that John Barnett, who worked for Boeing, was saying constantly that whenever he would try to document stuff that was going on, stuff that he didn't feel comfortable with, take stuff up the chain of command to his managers and stuff like that, he was that they were destroying his reports, and then they basically came to him and told him, like, listen, we don't want documentation on what's wrong here. We don't. The least amount of documentation, the better. And for anyone that's ever worked in any kind of corporate structure, that's absolutely not the way it's supposed to go. If anything, you're supposed to document everything, right? Mr. Paradis also claims that quote, they always said they didn't have time to fix the mistakes and needed to get the planes out. This guy says eventually in 2022 that his bosses at Spirit asked him to speed up his inspections by being less specific over the issues he was finding. And he said that when he expressed his opposition to this, he was demoted and moved to a different part of the factory. And then he ended up quitting in 2022. But this guy has recently, this is within the last 3 days, he's come out, he's given an interview on national television. And I would imagine that, this could potentially blow up. Do I know? Is there a lot of evidence at this point? Both of these deaths are both recent, pretty recent. There's not a ton of evidence to necessarily, confirm a conspiracy or a cover up yet. But I certainly think that one of the problems with this whole thing, whether or not these guys died from a suicide and from, an infection, or whether there was something more nefarious at work, I think the bigger thing here is that it's the same old adage, isn't it? Of like money will take care of you, right? It'll shield you from everything, right? And if you are one of the little guys, right, like us, and you see something wrong in your daily life, while you're going about your work or whatever, and you bring it to somebody's attention, or you take it to the level of, hey, I'm gonna blow the whistle on you. I'm gonna tell everybody what's up, and they can throw their lawyers at you. They can make your life a living hell. They can discredit you within your community, within your family, however, and what happens a lot of times in these kind of situations is the little guy runs out of money, um, and it's so to me, that's the even bigger thing about this whole thing, is it's kind of discouraging to somebody that would stand up for the truth, right? Because the truth doesn't always prevail, at least not right away, right? So,
and I would imagine that there's a lot of people that have been paid off and have accepted the payoff money to keep their mouth shut.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But the documentary, it's only an hour and a half long. It was really good. It did focus more on, and I liked it because a lot of the research I was doing, it didn't really, it kind of glazed over the two crashes because they didn't occur in the United States. And I think it should go without saying that, even with all this, traveling by airplane is still, statistically speaking, one of the safest modes of travel. It's way safer than driving a vehicle. But this is like the typical American consumerism, valuing the dollar over the safety of American lives, isn't it? Right. So I think it's important. The Netflix documentary is called Downfall: The Case Against Boeing. It was very good. And the thing that I liked the most about it is it really focused on the families of the people that died in that crash, right? And kind of like honoring them. And they were citizens from all over the place. There were American citizens on those planes, from all over the world, you know. And so, you know, their voices got to be heard a little bit, which I thought was important because, again, you know, a lot of the research kind of glazes over them. Well, it didn't happen in the U.S., it happened in Ethiopia. So, oh, well, you know, which is, I think, anyways, kind of what Boeing was gambling on, right? Is they were like, oh, well, you know, there's just those, you know, this is foreign pilots who didn't know what they were doing and whatever. And they thought that everybody would just buy that and shut up, you know?
Let's take a quick break.
This week's episode is brought to you by Kohler Construction LLC, your leading roof, window, and siding expert in the greater Twin Cities area. That's going to be Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, for those of you that didn't excel in geography. So, if those 12 feet of snow have finally caused your roof to cave in, if you're still rocking single pane windows that rattle every time the wind blows, if the eclipse burned a moon-sized hole in the side of your house, or if you just need a great value Henry Cavill lookalike to show up at your home and talk to you about golf, baseball, or general construction, then call Corey at 612-471-3248 and let Kohler Construction take care of business.
Now back to the guys.
That's kind of what I got, I think, with just kind of skimming the surface and not going too deep into you know, rabbit holes. I'll leave
that was good,
Bill. But
yeah, that was good though. That did, for someone who didn't do a lot of research on purpose, that gave a nice, accurate kind of description. What's up, Bill? What do you got for us?
First of all, great job, Greg. Fantastic. A lot to unpack there. Man, it's first of all, let me say I'm healthy. I don't feel like unaliving myself. My family loves me.
Just said that.
The brakes on my car work well, all those things. Okay. And it's not a conspiracy if it's true, Sean. Okay. So a lot to unpack there, Greg. You kind of glazed over it because there's so much information, and that's the one thing about there's so much information. But just to break it down, Boeing, okay, this guy in early 1900s starts Boeing. The guy was a gangster. I mean, he started as a lumber entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. After World War I. So he started with the mail planes, you know, to deliver mail. And then the war hit. He did one of the first fighter jets, et cetera, started to build it up. After the war, there was an influx in all these planes. He started selling like furniture and stuff like that just to keep it alive. And he turned this company into a huge thing. So, and Greg mentioned it beautifully, the 1934, you know, they had to split the company up and it became RTX. Today's RTX, which is Raytheon, which is billions and billions of dollar company, Boeing, which Greg named the three divisions of, and United Airlines, which is 5,000 flights a day, the second largest airline in the world. So when you think about that and what, you know, because Boeing is an American story, I love the roots of it, but what you're up against with someone like that, the number one shareholder of Boeing stock is Vanguard and BlackRock. Okay. To Boeing, they don't care about public perception. They care about the people at BlackRock and Vanguard sitting at that desk in that corporate meeting, looking at a spreadsheet and saying, what's the best way? The unfortunate truth of the companies of this magnitude is they bake lawsuit and loss into their profit margins. I mean, they say, if we can sell X amount of planes, this many people die. Well, it is what it is. Same thing with big pharma companies. You know what I mean? And the incident that happened, was it 19? The two wrecks that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Boeing clearly knew there was something wrong with those planes, but they continued to push it because they had so much money behind the design and all that stuff that you're not going to go back to the drawing board on that. So Boeing, those are the biggest shareholders. RTX, biggest shareholders. BlackRock and Vanguard. United Airlines, biggest shareholders. Guess who it is? BlackRock and Vanguard. So do you notice a theme here? So it's a $1 trillion conglomerate, and this conglomerate owns press as well. So what you were saying about trying to jam it in there, and they got away with it. How many times they probably got away with saying, yeah, it's the pilot's fault or this or that. You know what I mean? Well, now people start dying, it gets brought back up. You know, they'll find another way to sweep it under the rug. The unfortunate truth, though, too, is the guys, the whistleblowers, there's going to be a lot of percentage of whistleblowers that are disgruntled employees, too. you know. So I kind of was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt there. And overall, I will say that Boeing has a pretty clean record, like overall. Either they did a fantastic job of never letting any of this stuff come to the light over the years. So for me, the Boeing thing, I'm 100% certain that they're willing to cut corners and risk safety parameters to get people on these flights and money made. Close family member works in the airline industry or did for 5+ years, hiring airplane mechanics, and those mechanics would not want to work. Certain esteemed ones that had been doing it a long time didn't want to work on Boeing's due to the risk of liability of saying, you're not going to put this on me because you're trying to reach a crunch. And I know what they put those people through. They work them high hours. You miss 4 bolts, dude, and people are gone. You know what I mean? So there's a lot that goes under that the general public doesn't understand. You know, every time a plane flies into an airport, there's your life's on the line from some dude who might be pissed off or up on drugs all night trying to check your plane. You know what I mean? It's just the nature of the beast with all that stuff. So
Another
yeah,
thing to mention too with that is that they did for the congressional hearings and stuff like that. They had like a panel of pilots. Sully was the actual dude from that Tom
yeah,
Hanks played in the movie. Sully was one of them.
who landed the jet in the harbor in New York?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It was just like their panel of guys that have been pilots forever, you know, and know aircraft inside and out. And they one of the pilots was like, when they grounded all these 737s, right? And had to they were all grounded, but they had to go to storage facilities somewhere. They can't just sit where they're grounded, and they were having the hardest time in the world getting pilots to want to fly these
Yeah.
brand new planes to a storage facility. Like that's how how unsure of it. And it's like I liken that to like if you put a brand new Lamborghini in front of a race car driver and say, "Hey, drive this to storage for me," and like, "Nah, I better not," you know.
Right. Well, yeah, these pilots prefer the older models too because they're more reliable. So,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? I've been through
Less of the computer systems, you know, like more
right,
and rely on their own skill to do it. Yeah.
and you're like, this has been through 3,000 flights successfully, and 3,001 is probably likely this freaking thing. So yeah, 100%. And another thing about Boeing that I will say that I don't like, but it's the nature of the beast, is pretty much every war conflict fought right now, people are getting killed on both sides of the aisle by Boeing weapons. I mean, that's a fact. So that's one thing I don't like, you know, being a part of. You know, and to get it, I did get down the rabbit hole and really kind of going on this, doing my research, and you know, I looked, and there's now there's Pfizer, for example, whistleblower coming out saying that they were authorized to give special vaccines to special employees, like higher level employees, and another one that said that human cells were being used in the process there. So I like the fact that it seems like the whistleblowers are speaking up more. Then I got down a whole other rabbit hole with Ford and GM, and this is all factual stuff now, that Ford and GM were the #1 suppliers of trucks to Nazi Germany. And that's a fact if you look it up. So Henry Ford, for example, and this is just to talk about corporate greed. The guy, they produced the majority of Nazi trucks. He was awarded a medal by the Nazis as well for his valor during war, and his hype to deliver all these vehicles. Standard Oil, which is now Exxon Oil, they delivered the majority of the oil to the Nazis, and all the tetraethyl, which was needed for their planes to work, their fighter jets. So that's Exxon. Essentially, it became Exxon and a bunch of other smaller companies, which was originally owned by the Rothschilds and probably still is in some way or the other. U.S. government confiscated assets of 2 firms that served as fronts for Nazi regime, the Trading Corporation and the Seamless Steel Equipment Corporation, both controlled by UBC. Nazi interests directed by Prescott Bush and his father-in-law, George Walker. Among SAC's assets were a steel plant in Poland in the same district as Auschwitz. The plant reportedly used for concentration camps, the plant reportedly used concentration camp inmates as slave labor. So these guys were all in bed together back then, and I, from what I could find, Boeing was not attached to any of that. So I will give them props to that. But these guys were all in cahoots. Literally, you can do all the research to this stuff. And the top two finance guys from Nazi Germany were this guy Thyssen and a guy Flick, and they both went to the Nuremberg trials. They had assets and were directors on the same board as some of the gentlemen I just named. And the one guy got 15% of his net worth taken, and the other got 7 years in jail with time served. And their charges were like war crimes, like plundering countries, enslaving people. So, we're down here, dicking away in the maze, and these people, it's a joke. Is my point?
So, hold on. So, were they involved with Boeing at all? Any of the stuff you just talked about?
Not at all. That's what.
No,
I'm saying.
he's just kind of saying
I'm clearing Boeing.
No,
if you heard that part, I'm saying Boeing actually was not involved with any of this stuff.
What does that have to? Does that have to do with what Greg was talking about, though?
No, yeah, because it's big money is big money, and it's old money, and it's gonna always perpetuate this kind of cycle of like, hey, if I've got it, you can't tell me anything, and I'm gonna do essentially what I want, even if as a public face we're gonna get a slap, like the world is condemning us, but behind closed doors we're gonna get a slap on the wrist, and we're gonna keep on going and doing what we do.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, corporate greed. I mean, really, like I said, I was in the rabbit hole. I got down in the trenches on it, but it is very interesting. The entire thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know what you learned from this whole segment here, Sean, but I hope it was informative. I thought Greg did a fantastic job laying all that out. If anyone ever wants any resources, feel free to reach out.
Very good. Well, I haven't really quite gotten this whole segue thing, especially when we come off of something like that to the next segment, what we're going to do next. But we are in honor of Mother's Day.
That's a hell of a segue.
Have a little Mother's Day segment. Yeah. And it's not really going to be like recovery specific, but I'm definitely going to incorporate a few recovery things in it. My mom being in her own type of recovery, not from drugs and alcohol necessarily, but my wife is also in recovery from drugs and alcohol. And we're going to we kind of hit a stopping point with our recovery segment last week. Not a stopping point, but we finished kind of what we were wanting to do that first kind of however many weeks. And we're going to definitely do more recovery stuff. We're going to do all kinds of recovery stuff actually in the weeks coming forward. But tonight we wanted to give a special shout out to all the mothers and do a little stuff on Mother's Day. So, Bill, I had planned on kicking this over to you first. Do you want to go first on this, or do you want to take a breath? Whatever you want to do.
No, I'll go last or something. Yeah.
You want to go last? All right.
Whatever. Not first.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
my Nazi theory.
That's fine. I figured that. Yeah. I'll go first. So, happy Mother's Day to all mothers. I know that, my mother and my wife are huge parts of my life today. There's plenty of other women in my life that have been strong, female supports, Miss Kathleen to speak of. And there's a lady in Virginia, Miss Carol Seneschal. Shout out to Miss Carol. That was always like second moms to me in many ways. And there's been many others. So I'm not going to name them all, but I want special shout out to all of them that have helped shape me into the man that I am today, both in the dark days and in the days of light. My wife, who's in recovery, I've shared about that a little bit. She's sober almost 10 years. I just celebrated 13 years the other day. And so our household was built on a household of recovery. Both of our kids were at recovery-based meetings and get-togethers, both of them when they were about 6 days old. So it's really truly incorporated into just about every facet of our life. And I know it's not necessarily the case for everybody's significant other on this podcast and families and stuff. But this is, just from my experience. And I was able to share at a recovery group the other night for my anniversary. And I was my wife actually introduced me at that group, and one of the things that I was talking about was how grateful I am that there's this level of understanding between my wife and I on what each other needs to do to enhance and to strengthen our own recovery. We both have set nights a week where if we need to go out and meet with other people in recovery, or whatever activities we're doing, trying to help others in need specifically, we both have set nights and specific nights where we can go and do that stuff, and there's no questions asked. It's just kind of understood that the other parent takes care of the kids, and it's that parent's duty to get the kids homework and bath and dinner and in bed and all that, and the other parent can go out and strengthen their recovery. And same thing if something were to come up randomly, because as you guys know, sometimes people call it emergencies, call it whatever you need to call it, friend in need, someone needs help, it pops up. And how grateful I am that I have that significant other that just fully understands that doesn't even, it's not even, you don't even bat an eyelash. It's just like, go ahead. The other thing I want to touch on is, we often talk about, and we all say it, we've all heard it, about how's our program working at the breakfast table, or who deserves this more than the families, right? My parents specifically, did a lot of work on their own recovery and their own enabling years before I even got sober. And that work that they did was completely, I noticed it. Like, it was apparent to me even a few years before I got sober. Both of my parents kind of stayed in their own kind of family support groups for many years after I got sober. My mom is still pretty involved. My dad, not so much, but it was kind of funny. They were both really involved for many years prior to me getting sober. And then when I got sober, they stayed involved. And then my mom kind of faded away, but my dad stayed super involved. And now it's kind of the opposite. The last few years, my mom's gotten back into it a lot, and my dad's kind of faded away. But both of them are solid in their own, in their own lives. And I'm extremely close with them today. And it's a direct result of the God of our understandings. My dad, who's not a super religious man, but has definitely his own. I remember a couple years ago, he was volunteered. He was driving the like courtesy shuttle golf cart, if you will, at his local church in his community. And that was his idea of service and volunteer work, and he loved it. And he did it for a little while. My mom is very involved in her church and like I said, her family recovery support groups, and she's very active. Matter of fact, I got to speak with her about 4 or 5 months ago at her recovery meeting, her family support group. We both did about 15 minutes each. And you guys know me, I can talk forever on recovery, no matter what setting I'm in. But I knew for her, she was really nervous, first off, and she did a great job. She's a great speaker as well. But how important and how special that was to her. And that made it that much more special to me, because this is something that I could do with her. And there were many years there where she wasn't proud. Not that she wasn't proud of me, but she couldn't. When the neighbor or the friend of the family asked, "Oh, how's Sean doing?" It was not it was not a good report, so to speak. So, my wife and I, back to my wife real quick, and then I'll kick it over to Greg. Is like, we do a lot of stuff separately in recovery, which is important. But we do a lot of stuff together, and we both have kind of learned over the years how to strike that balance where I'm not all up in her business about how she's doing it and how she's helping the women she tries to help, and she's not all up in my business, vice versa. We both do go to each other for different some advice and some guidance on certain subjects, because she's really good in certain areas and has a lot of experience, and same with me. And I'm close with the women in her life that have helped her get sober and stay sober and be the mother she is today. And she's close to some of the men and people in my life as well. And it kind of, it's a pretty cool thing. It's a cool thing to be a part of. It's a cool thing to have in your life. It presents its own set of challenges. Absolutely. And sometimes the egos flare up and all that. But the truth is, like, I wouldn't have it any other way. I really, truly wouldn't have it any other way. I know that it's easy to say that because this is how my life has been for a long time, and this is what I believe God wants in our lives. But, it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of, and our kids get to be raised in that conversation of God and structure and discipline and just love and fun. And again, fill in any kind of cheesy adjective you want, but it's the absolute truth. So shout out to all the moms out there. We love you, and we are damn sure grateful that you've helped make us into the men we are today. So that's all.
That
Greg.
was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you, Sean. I do want to say that it has been awesome to witness both of you guys, and definitely Corey, like in your respective relationships with your wives. Well, to see you guys grow from, either being single or just dating to, marrying these women, and you guys are just, all of you, the moms out there too, are great at like the being an example of what happens when you put recovery and God into the middle of your relationship, and the cool things that can happen as a result of that. None of the women that I'm going to mention are in recovery, because there's only one black sheep in this family, and it is me. But I do want to give some very special shout outs. My own mom, Suzanne, who is Sean's mom, is also named Suzanne, so that's a fun coincidence. But yeah, man, Suzanne had to put up with a lot, and I can say that she was not proud of me for a certain amount of time there, for sure. My mom's been a single mom since my little sister was born. I was like 3 years old, and she's did a lot of it on her own, and by herself. She was always great at kind of being the loving mom, and also the good disciplinarian, where you could she didn't let me get away with too much, even though I thought for a long time I had her wrapped around my finger. Maybe I did a little bit, who knows, but I was always good at the manipulating. But yeah, man, shout out to her. She's done an amazing job. And it has been the best part about my recovery, has been being able to come back and into my family's lives, and rebuild the relationships that I almost single-handedly destroyed, throughout my drinking and drug addiction. So it's been cool, and it's been great. It hasn't always been easy, the rebuilding of trust, especially between a parent and a child, is not easy, especially when it's the child that's destroyed all that, right? So it hasn't always been easy, but I'm grateful for every minute of it, and I'm proud to say that we have a good relationship today. um Shout out to my sister, Jen, out in Nevada. She is, again, I had to rebuild that relationship with her. I put her through the ringer, but she's always, 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 since we were little, been right there by my side, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It is very cool that I get to be an uncle to her children today, and that she even, crazy enough, like, trust me, she's sending both the kids here to visit. They live in Nevada, but she's sending both the kids here this summer for a month, to hang out, and that's going to be I might be pulling my hair out by the end of it. I might really need you boys, but it's going to be fun, man. I'm really excited about it. But it always gives me pause, and it always makes me think, like, how lucky those kids are that they didn't have to know me as the hopeless, just despicable individual I was at times. um and yeah, so that's a big blessing. Shout out to my wonderful girlfriend Lauren. She is a single mom to a cool, awesome young kid named Peyton. He's 6 years old. I got to give him a quick shout out. He played his championship flag football game today, playoff game. They won. They went to the championship game. They did not come out on top, but that's been cool to watch him go through that. But yeah,
Building a little
she's
scar tissue there.
yeah,
Scar
yeah,
tissue. It'll
yeah.
be all right.
Glad you're teaching them the Browns way, Greg.
No, I haven't stiff armed him just yet, but no, but she's done great. She's got a fantastic family around her. But she's done a lot of it on her own, man, and she is a great example for me of patience. She is so patient, man, and sometimes I just have to sit back and watch and look and learn and keep my mouth shut, which is good for me and probably good for her and definitely good for the kid. So yeah. And certainly I would be remiss not to mention, and there's a lot of people out here like this, but there's a very cool, very wonderful woman in Missouri named Dolores, and she is raising her granddaughter because her daughter didn't make it, and that's the reality for a lot of us. I'm blessed to be one of the guys that did make it, and not the other way around. But yeah, shout out to her. She's doing an amazing job with little Ayala, and yeah, that's what I got. So happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Take us home, Billy boy.
Yeah, shout out to her. That's awesome, Greg. Thanks. Thanks to both of you guys. For me, my grandma raised me, so I was a product of that situation. So it definitely touched a chord with me. Man, my grandma was awesome. She was a hero to me. She gave up her retirement to raise me and my brother, who were a freaking handful, dude. We were both crazy, had been through a lot of shit, and had a lot of ramifications from it. And I know me, like I was quite the handful. But she always loved me, man. She loved me through it, even towards the bitter end there, like whenever things got on the rocks with us, and we kind of had to separate ways. But she always remained in my life till the end. But she was there. She taught me so much. She always prayer, prayer. Just that strong will inside of yourself, and she also taught me like to just genuinely look at the bright side of things. I think she put that in me. Like, I think I do that a lot. Thank God for her, because I know a lot of people who don't live like that. And I try to be like that. And, you can't replace like a woman's love, in your heart, even from a young age, and then I didn't get to know my mom until, my grandma passed in 2004. And then I got to know my mom in my 20s, and we had a good couple years that I'm very grateful for together. She also did a lot of healing with my brother, and she was recovered for a bit, and she put the mustard seed into me of what to do whenever I needed to down the road. She started taking me to the places to go for recovery. Here I am. I'm like, I'm going to be supportive of my mom and go to these meetings with her. And sure enough, she knew that down the road I would need this, and when she was gone, I did need it. So, shout out to her as well. Shout out to Susan Lee, who also passed away in 2017, my buddy's mom, who let me stay on the couch even after her and her son I would get in fist fights, and he'd be, don't let Bill come there. I'd still go on the couch and stay there, man. Save me from the sleeping outside a lot of nights. And shout out to just that love, you know what I mean, that you get, that you can't really replace, And today I have my aunt, my uncle's wife Susan, shout out to her, and my aunt Maggie in Virginia, that they show me a lot of love. I talked to them, fully reconciled those relationships. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up my wife, and shout out to her as well. And we're a blended family, you know what I mean? And she's taught me a lot about emotion, about regulation of emotions, just the depth of emotion, and things like that. It's like an alien language when I first got with her. And I'm kind of like, oh, that's what she meant like 6 years ago, whenever she said that to me. Like 6 years later, I'm getting it, slowly but surely. And yeah, and not only that, but like the level of love she's able to give our son and my daughter. Like I'm just not fully capable of it, man. I don't know. I'm not like that, like snuggly and blah, 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 and just she can touch like their heart so quickly. You know what I mean? And I just can't. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's a guy thing. I'm sure there's guys who can do that. I can do it in my own way. It's like more like let's play around type of deal. but she's able to like just like break that armor down in our kids, and like just seeing that and just seeing the love of all that and the creativity that she has. Shit, if it was up to me, we would have no decorations or anything in this house. So apparently that's important too. I've learned that in the last 7 or 8 years. But man, just shout out to her. We went through a lot. I won't get too into it, but she was there for me. She traveling up the eastern seaboard for my daughter, coming with me to South Carolina to see my daughter for a couple hours and back in this, and bring her son, our son, with us, and kind of holding the strings together, then holding the strings together in family court, and holding the strings together whenever I had a back fusion surgery. Yeah, sure, we've had rocky times, but man, the love there is deep, and we've persevered through a lot, and I think it's made us a lot stronger. So shout out to her no matter what, and all the women that made you guys the special guys that you are today, because now I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. Back to you, Sean.
A mother's love is a mother's love. There is not anything quite like it. Catherine's the same way. Like there's just a level of, like you said it, Bill, like emotion and the way she interacts with our children and really other children too. Like, any children that are over here at our house are considered our own for that time. It is special. And I think we as dads and as dudes, have our own version of that. I know I do with my girls specifically. I have 2 girls, but it's, mom's love is something special. So it's definitely something special, and it makes me a little emotional just thinking about it. So I love you guys very much, and it's like Greg kind of mentioned it, like to watch. Greg, I know you haven't quite tied the knot yet, but I've met your mom. I've met your sister, and Bill, obviously, seen you walk through all that stuff. Walked with you through a lot of it, and you've done the same with me. And it's. I think one of our books says the age of miracles is still upon us, and that's certainly true. So, parting thoughts from you fine gentlemen. I hope Corey's all right.
I missed all
We
the
haven't
awkward
heard from-
pauses and small hand gestures.
This was as smooth as could be. Just want you guys to know that. So
We're
my
under
mom
on time now.
My mom loves Corey, by the way. She's like, he's so with just his personality, and it works so good. He's he plays cranky so well, she said. So I said, yeah, it's true.
We're going to keep him around, Suzanne. Don't worry.
Always.
Well, boys, shout out to our listeners. Shout out to all of you.
Are you planning any, you guys cooking for your wives on Sunday morning? Any special breakfast treats we can dispose of right now? Because this won't be out till Tuesday. So you can spill the beans.
Mine's working, and then we're going out to dinner Sunday night with my mom and the kids. Got a reservation at an undisclosed location on the water.
Flanagan's.
It's not on the water.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a puddle out back.
That's close.
Shout out to our listeners. Shout out once again to all the moms out there, all the soon to be. Oh, my brother-in-law and his wife just had their first baby like 2 weeks ago. Shout out to Katie and Kyle. They're doing great as parents, and shout out to Katie on her first Mother's Day.
Yeah.
The baby's adorable. So please like, follow, and share on all socials at Trudge Report Pod. Email us, trudgereportpod@yahoo.com. Send us anything you want. Mailbag requests, something you like, something you don't like. If
jokes about Corey, whatever you want.
Jokes about Corey. If Greg mispronounced Santiago's last name and that culture, they want to, rip us apart, by all means, send it on. If you're struggling with anything, any form of addiction or just anything, we're here. That's kind of what we do. We'd love to help. Thank you to Miss Janine and Stella Mix Podcast Management. Good night. God bless. And may you trudge the road of happy destiny. We will see you next week. Bon voyage.